Hey, back with Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. And this is a new campaign. The last campaign, I started a Germany 1910 campaign with the 1.03 beta. And as typically happens in these campaigns, kind of got out to a fairly lopsided victory point start to the point where they made their first peace offer. And, I hadn't really gotten all out of that campaign that I wanted. Wanted to see more of the 1.03 stuff. I kind of had an unusual battlecruiser design that looked like it was working okay, but I wasn't ready to continue playing with it, so, or wasn't ready to stop playing with it. I kind of liked it and I wanted to do more of that. Anyway, so I chose Fight to the End when they first put out their peace feeler, which was only 7 months in. And lo and behold, the government disregarded my recommendation and the war, and therefore the campaign ended. Okay. And I had made the mistake of, saying no to that right at the end of a month. And what I should have done was advanced a month just to see what would happen and make sure the campaign would continue. I didn't, so then I go to make a new episode. First thing that happens is the campaign ends. So lesson learned there for me. In any case, so this is really kind of a semi-continuation of that campaign in some ways, in that I've built similar ships. I haven't built any yet, but I designed similar ships, and I kind of still want to play the same sort of way. Made a few changes, and it was Germany last time. I just decided to go Britain this time. So settings for this campaign are Britain 1910. I went ahead and chose hard. I don't really think there's a huge difference between normal and hard in this game, not at this current stage of the campaign. I think maybe there will be more in the future. And I set random AI behavior. Basically, for all British campaigns, I choose random. For all Germany campaigns, I choose historical. And the reason for that is my assumption is that the British historical behavior is probably the most aggressive of whatever the various flavors of AI behavior they have are, whereas the German one may be more cautious. Anyway, so those are the settings I chose. I went ahead and designed the ships off camera because I didn't want to burn, like an hour-plus video or two with y'all watching me fiddle around with weight offset and tweaking and things like that. I haven't built any yet, though. So let's just have a look at what I've designed. And they're fairly similar to what was in the last campaign in most respects. I did do a couple new things. I'm kind of continuing that same experiment, which seemed to be working pretty well in the short Germany campaign preceding this, of a fairly modestly priced battlecruiser hull that is really more of a pocket battleship or small battleship. It's not particularly fast, and it is pretty heavily armored. So it's not really a battlecruiser in kind of the traditional understanding of the term. I just used a battlecruiser hull, and I could have done the same thing with the Dreadnought hull as well. But anyway, so pretty similar to what I had done before, and kind of went with that the same concept of not that many main turrets, and they're both up forward. Now, on the British hull, couldn't quite do the same kind of Nelson-looking superstructure way aft sort of thing because of the configuration of the hull and the towers are longer than the 1910 Germany towers are. So because of that, they kind of take up a central position anyway. It is possible to place this second tower down here on the aft deck. Could have done that and placed the main tower much further aft. But that kind of got in the way of what I wanted to do with the secondaries, and you know, with this configuration, there's still plenty of space up here for the main turrets. So this worked out okay. Two main turrets. I went with 12-inch double turrets. I actually did not have triples available yet to me in 1910. As I recall, that's not always the case in 1910. The starting tech you get is a little randomized. So in each start for a given era, you might have different options available or not available to you. In any case, there were no double turrets, or triple turrets rather, so I went with the doubles. I think I would have anyway. This early, triple turrets carry a pretty hefty accuracy penalty. Did have 13-inch available, and I certainly could have had the tonnage available for them. But going with the 12 saves a little weight, saves a little cost, and I think that they are plenty big enough for this era. I think the 12-inch guns are kind of a sweet spot in the range of calibers. As you from the smaller guns on up through, as you increase in caliber, basically everything about the guns except for reload rate of fire, but everything else, the accuracy, the damage, the penetration, the range, they all keep increasing. And so, each caliber is objectively better than the one before in pretty much all respects, until you hit about 12 inches. And then you start getting trade-offs, right? As the guns get bigger, the damage and the pen and the range keep increasing, but not necessarily the accuracy. And of course, the rate of fire just falls off further and further and further. And so I think that kind of at this era, the 12-inch gun is just better than the 13, in my opinion. Now, at longer ranges, the 13-inch is only slightly less accurate. By longer ranges, I mean 10 kilometers and farther. It is less accurate than a 12, but not by that much. But at 10 kilometers and shorter, the difference in accuracy between the 12 and the 13 is actually quite surprising. I mean, I kind of knew that, but I hadn't looked close until I was building this thing, and I was pretty surprised at how big the gap was. In any case, 12 inch is what I went with, and I didn't put any secondaries up here, and I spaced them out a little bit from the forward tower so that they would have a nice wide firing arc and could fire well aft, similar to what I did before. And then back here, the configuration is a little bit different than on the German version of this I did because of the hull and everything. And so I've got a whole bunch of 5-inch sitting back here to like for destroyer ambush battles and stuff like that. A whole bunch of 5-inch just sitting back here to pummel any TVs, or I think there's still TVs available in 1910, or DDs that are chasing me, light cruisers, that sort of thing. Also threw on some 3-inch back here in the aft tower, and they're a little superfluous, but frankly it was kind of a why not. And it helped with balancing the ship. So I threw those on there. Interesting point, though. Kind of going a little bit on a tangent, but I chose the 3-inch I mean, the choices were 2-inch and 3-inch for these little superstructure casemate guns, nothing bigger. And I chose the 3-inch for their range. But I hadn't really noticed before some of the differences in the 2-inch and 3-inch. If I were doing another 1890 or 1910, where the torpedo ranges are like 0.9 for 1890 and 1.5 for 1900. If I were doing one of those again, where torpedo boats are coming in that close, I think I'd go with the 2-inch. At something like 2.5 kilometers and more, the 3-inch are more accurate, but the 2-inch are significantly more accurate at like 1,000 meters, which is a pretty typical engagement range for small ships in 1890. And of course, they don't penetrate as much and have slightly lower damage, but they penetrate plenty enough for the job against that kind of target. I mean, a torpedo boat, by definition, has 0 armor. So the penetration is fine on the 2-inch, and the damage difference between the two isn't as big as I would have thought. And at such close ranges, the 2-inchers are more accurate and have such a higher rate of fire over the 3. So I went ahead and did 3-inch for this scenario, for this era. But if I were to go back and design another battleship or something for another 1890 campaign, I think I would load that thing down with 2-inch secondaries. I think it'd be pretty interesting to see. I may do like a custom battle or two on that. In any case, so there's the battle cruiser. It's what I did with it. It does have one vulnerability that I'm a little concerned about, and that is, let me find it. Flash fire chance is 6%. And so I'm kind of worried about that. And the main reason that is I went with the least volatile propellant and shell charge available, which the TNT-1 is, it's got a negative. Minus 20% on flash fire explosion chance and minus 25% on spread chance. However, there really isn't a super stable propellant option available. White powder is the least volatile that I had. The other two were ballistite and I think dunite, both of which have huge numbers. It's like using picric acid. But even though it's not as bad as the others, the white powder still has a plus 10% chance and a plus 20% spread chance. So, a little concerned about that. These things might be flash firing on us. The more stable propellants that give you the green minus percent buffs are tube powder and I think maybe one of the higher, I think maybe one of the cordites, possibly. Anyway, none of those were available. This is the best I could do. I definitely did not feel like I could do without the increased ammo. And that is partly because of with this design, I've only got the 2 turrets. And I know it's by turret, right? That ideally this would fire as long, or that you would have basically scaling ammo depending on the number of turrets. I get that. But the volume of fire is smaller. We're just going with the 2 turrets. And we kind of saw that in the last abbreviated campaign where I think this battery will do the job. But it will take longer, and the battles will last a little bit longer as a result. And I just did not want to give up making sure that I have plenty of ammo for that eventuality, which I expect to occur. It's not just might happen, I think it probably will happen. So that left heavy versus standard shells. And I kind of dithered on this a little bit. And the differences in accuracy, pin, and damage and range were enough of a difference, all in favor of the heavy shells, that I decided to risk it. If I went standard, I would have a 4% flash chance. And I decided to risk it, and I may regret that decision. Standard may have been the best way to handle this. And oh, by the way, Barbette 3 is the highest available I had. So I've got the max available Barbette. I also have the, it doesn't really affect flash fire, but I also went with the max Citadel. I did see something interesting about Barbettes that I had never noticed before. As I played around with the different Barbette levels I actually didn't notice it on this design, but I noticed it when I was doing the cruiser, actually. But as I was playing around with different Barbette levels to see what the flash fire chance effects were, I also noticed, for the first time ever, that the flooding chance was changing with Barbette level as well. So I bet that's not common knowledge among UAD players, that Barbette level affects your flooding chance. That is not an intuitive thing to, that would be obvious, but it does apparently. Okay, I think I've said everything I need to say about the battlecruiser. I guess the only other thing I think worth mentioning is when it came to the armor, the max size gun that I had available was 13-inch. Therefore, it's probably fairly likely, I think. The AI kind of comes in two ways with autogen ships. They either come with the biggest gun that they could possibly get for the era, or they come surprisingly undergunned, and you'll see like a battleship with 10-inch guns or something. Those kinds of builds happen a lot. In any case, as I was plugging in these armor values, I was looking at the hit chances and belt and deck penetration values for the 13-inch gun. And basically, with these values, for the main belt and deck, not for the fore and aft, but for the main belt and deck, theoretically, a 13-inch armed battleship or battlecruiser is going to need to be something like 20 kilometers away to drop a plunging shot through this level of deck armor. It needs to be up at about, I think, 2 kilometers or less to penetrate this main belt. Because this is a 14-inch main belt, but I've got the Krupp 3, which is adding 93%. So this is effectively something like 26 to 27 effective inches of armor. And then a similar kind of modifier for the main deck as well. So we should not be seeing very many penetrations, full penetrations of main, belt, and deck on this battlecruiser, regardless of however the AI is armed. On main, they'll get their pins on the fore and aft and the superstructure and all that sort of thing. But hopefully that means, that we won't be seeing too many propulsion damage occurrences. Now the rudder, it's back aft, and so yeah, that could get torn up. And it's pretty irritating when it does. Well, that's enough on the battlecruiser. Now for the armored cruiser, I'm doing something a little unusual, which will probably raise some eyebrows. Somewhat similar philosophy in that it's a little bit slower. This is a 9-inch armored cruiser. I kind of plugged its armor values with an eye toward being effective against 10-inch guns. I had up to 11-inch available for the armored cruiser. I don't recall ever seeing, or if I have, it was very, very rare. The AI is unlikely to put out an 11-inch armored cruiser. So it's armed with 9. The armor is kind of optimized for defending against 10. I think that's fine for the era. I gave it some range with maximum bulkheads. It's kind of standard. I did this with the battlecruiser too. It's kind of standard. I always like some level of aux and shaft, and I always go with the unbalanced rudder, just to make the ship more maneuverable for torpedo dodging. This was actually the design during which I noticed that barbette flooding thing. I think a lot of this is fairly self-explanatory. I did not have the same sort of flash. I am at flash fire 3%, but I didn't really have the same kind of challenge as I did with the battlecruiser on that. Did give it some torpedoes. I think it's just the port and starboard underwater tubes. It's all you get in 1910. I chose not to do radio, and I don't think I did radio for any of the ships except for the battlecruiser itself. And even then, I'm not really sure why I did. And the main reason for that is I think this is something they need to adjust. Radio is just, both from a gameplay perspective and trade-offs for capability versus cost, and then also just from a real-world realism sense, radio weighs too damn much. Like, I've had cases on a battleship where an increment of, there's only the one advanced for 1910, but there's 2 or 3 different levels. And I've had cases on a battleship where adding radio added well over 1,000 tons because it scales. It's a percentage of your main tower weight. I don't really think that's the way radio should work. I mean, I know it was big, the tech was new and the components and everything were big and clunky, but like 1,000 tons of radio equipment, I'm not buying it. So it's just not worth the weight, in my opinion. And I also don't think it's very realistic. They need to look at this. So all that so far is pretty standard. And what I'm doing different here, though, is you notice I've only got the one funnel. I built this thing with 47% engine efficiency. Yep. And the reason I did that was because on these earlier hulls, especially with cruisers, in order to get up to 100% or even, like in the 90s or the 80s% engine efficiency, and this isn't a particularly fast ship either, right? I didn't try to make this thing 30 knots or whatever. In order to get a nice engine efficiency at this level of tech with these funnels and these towers, the smoke interference just goes through the roof. I was playing around with it. I had a couple funnels on here, and the bigger ones with the bigger capacity, and I was getting smoke interference like above 50, which was carrying like an over 20% gunfire accuracy nerf. and that's with, you know, I possibly could have gone with natural boilers, but then that would have driven that drove the engine efficiency down into the 20s. So bottom line is, yeah, okay, big nerf to accelerations. I'm giving up some range. And minus 43% torque at high RPM. You know, and I've always, you know, I think most players design for high engine efficiency. I think many players probably will settle for nothing less than 100%. Yeah, I'm certainly that way. And so I was sitting here thinking, but I had just started paying more attention to smoke interference, and I saw those enormous numbers, and I'm like, maybe that's why my early cruisers never freaking hit anything. So I've never actually played with engine efficiencies this low. And I'm kind of thinking, okay, I mean, minus 27% acceleration. Well, that doesn't mean it doesn't accelerate at all. Maybe it's not really that bad. Maybe it's livable. I don't know. So I'm seeing, you know, is a really bad engine efficiency as bad as it sounds compared to the huge amount of smoke that comes with it. So it's something new. From maybe other people have done this routinely and know the answer, and I haven't. So I want to see what happens. So that's the heavy cruiser. Light cruiser. So there were a couple options here. I could have used one of the semi-armored cruiser hulls, which are much bigger, and they actually look more like just smaller versions of the armored cruiser, as the name would imply. Those would have been more expensive, and they also had a really low hull form, which means it would require a lot of propulsion investment to get the same amount of speed. So the regular light cruiser hull was kind of more designed for a decently fast ship, and also cheaper. So I went with that, which is pretty similar to what I had done before in the Germany run. And the ship itself is similarly armed for the same reasons. 6-inch centerline forward and aft, and then a whole bunch of 4-inch along the sides. And what I had tried to do was just make it all 5-inch. 5-inch all the way around, and I thought that would be pretty nice against the types of targets against which the light cruiser needs to be good for gunnery, which are transports, destroyers, torpedo boats, and other light cruisers. I tried that, and this number isn't that great, but putting all those 5-inch mounts along the deck edge here, that just drove roll through the roof, and I just couldn't do it. And if I recall, I think I had a similar experience trying to do something like that in the Germany campaign. So 6-inch main, just 2 of them, and a whole bunch of 4-inch along the sides. And then I did something somewhat similar. I did want this ship to be a faster vessel. I settled for 28 knots, which isn't super fast, but I think that's fairly speedy for 1910. I think it's not a certainty at all, but I think there's a better than even chance that it's probably still going to be faster than the German light cruiser will be. It might not, but odds are in my favor, I'll put it that way. And I didn't quite go to the extreme of the armored cruiser, but I did the same thing here. I'm settling for engine efficiency in the 60s, and for the same reason. Even that low with 2 funnels, I've still got smoke interference almost 30. If I'd gone with enough funnels to get up even into the 80s and 90s, the smoke interference would be up in the 40s or maybe 50. So kind of made a similar trade-off here. Now with just the one funnel to get smoke interference down close to zero, that was like 22% or something. So I was like, okay, I'm not going quite that far. Anyway, that's the light cruiser. And I think everything else is fairly not a huge deal. I didn't have flash fire problems with this cruiser, unlike the German one I made with the TNT, and it was enough where I could handle the heavy shells. But on the other hand, 4-inch guns, 6-inch guns, those things always have enough ammo anyway. I didn't really feel a big need to go increased ammo for that. And I think my flash fire chance is pretty low. Yeah, 1%. With the Barbette 3. I did have to pop the Barbette 3 on there to get it that low. I just went with 0 armor, fore and aft. But the main belt is maxed out. The conning tower is actually maxed out. On this class, the max for conning tower is actually lower than it is for the main belt. Maxed out I maxed out the main gun sights. I didn't do anything with the 4-inch. I cannot claim that that was a conscious decision. I think I just forgot to look at it. So I might be losing a lot of 4-inch guns on this class in this campaign. I usually don't pay attention to the secondaries, but there's so many of them, and I've only got the 2 calibers, that the 4-inch, I mean, this is really kind of both main armament. I really should have looked at that. I also have very high superstructure armor. And the reason I did that was, the superstructure is here toward the central part of the ship, and I had already maxed out the main belt. So I did heavy armor on the superstructure, not so much for armor reasons, but just to tilt kind of the center of gravity, the weight back toward the middle, in order to drive down the pitch and roll numbers a little bit. And it does have that effect. The more armor you add to main belt, main deck, superstructure, those 3 categories have an effect, a beneficial effect on your pitch and roll. So that's why I put so much armor on the superstructure. What else do I want to say about this ship? I guess the only other thing to mention about it is it's a 7,000-ton max displacement ship. I only used 6,650. Just kind of got to a point where I think the design was fine where it was. And just adding more stuff just to add more weight was just kind of driving the cost up more. And so I just left 350 tons empty. Now one thing I could have done would have been to shrink the ship here down to 6,650. And it's not that big a change. I don't think it would have shortened the dimensions enough so that all of a sudden stuff wasn't fitting anymore. That happens a lot when you change displacement a lot after you've placed stuff. I think 6,650 would have worked. And it would have driven the cost down some. However, when you do that, and I've tried this before too, that drives your pitch and roll numbers back up. So the extra cost for essentially this unused tonnage can be thought of as you're buying extra platform stability, thereby helping accuracy. That's the way I chose to look at it. That's the way I choose to look at it. Anyway, that's what I did for the light cruiser. And then for the destroyer, I generally just tend to like a lot of guns on my destroyer, despite the fact that their main threat to enemy warships is their torpedo. The battle generator likes to give destroyers a lot of convoy battles. And even though in the current state of the campaign, how much effect battles sunk transports has on economy is not clear. I've never seen direct evidence that it helps, but I've never seen any direct evidence that it doesn't. But basically, I like having a lot of guns on destroyers so that they can tear up convoys pretty nice. And they're also good against other destroyers, and not that bad against light cruisers either. I think, you know, it's got tons of ammo for these things, and you know, fires a lot of HE. And if necessary, you know, I think the first battle of the Germany campaign, and which was a bit of a chaotic mess. However, at the end, all my destroyers had burned their torpedoes, but they finished off an enemy armored cruiser just by circling it and peppering it with 4-inch HE. So, you know, it came into play against a pretty big warship. So that's why I only have the one torpedo launcher. I went with the bigger one. You know, just a double deck launcher is the biggest available. There's no triples or quads yet in 1910. Could have gone with two, but you know, I probably wouldn't have been able to get all these guns on here I wanted, and I think two's enough for each shot. But I did go with the biggest available torp, which is only 19-inch in this era. But something I don't normally do is I went ahead and went with the increased ammo torps. I want these things to have reloads so that they can, you know, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Going against, you know, armored cruisers and battle cruisers and battleships, if they live, of course. And the other reason to go with just the one, and I put it midships, is because relative to the tonnage of the ship, you know, this is true for any ship really. You know, torpedo launchers weigh a lot, and of course so do the reloads. And so I just put it right here midships, because putting it up here on the foredeck or back here on the fantail, you know, you get into some kind of weight balancing issues. Anyway, that's what I did with the destroyer. I do like to armor my destroyers. There's kind of two schools of thought there. Some people, and it's not a bad philosophy. So, you know, it's just not worth putting armor on destroyers, so they just go 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And I'm not saying that's wrong at all. You know, there's different design philosophies, and you know, people can make them work. So that's cool. I like to armor mine, though. As I mentioned, you get a lot of convoy battles with destroyers, and you know, a lot of time, not always, sometimes they're unarmed, but probably the majority of the time they've got like a 4-inch mount on them, and there's a bunch of transports and they're all close together. So if you're taking fire from one, you're taking fire from like 5 or 6 all at once. It's almost like facing the secondaries of a you know, like a cruiser or something. And so I like to put a little armor on it for that scenario, and also helps out against the guns of other destroyers. I did try one time in a campaign, long before I started recording them. It's not on YouTube, but I did try one time going with the no armor destroyer. And that thing got chewed up pretty bad. pretty quick by transports. So I was like, ever since then I've gone back to I just like putting armor on destroyers, and that's a preference. I'm not saying that's the way to do things. It's just what I like to do. Okay, enough gabbing about the fleet designs, and I haven't actually bought any. About the fleet composition. I don't think I'm going to go out of my way to try to blockade Germany, although that's kind of, an obvious thing to do as Britain to force an end to the campaign. And I'm not saying I'm not going to blockade. I'm just saying right now my idea is I'm not going to go out of my way. A few episodes in, I may change my mind. I don't know. But I'm not planning to do it for now. Another thing is, I did put this on hard difficulty. Germany's going to have a lot of money. Now, I got a lot of money too, as Britain. But there may not be as big a difference in naval funds and monthly naval income as there would be under normal difficulty circumstances. So, basically, I want to maintain I just want to make sure that I don't let the fleet get so small that Germany has a chance to blockade me. So what I want to do is I want to maintain at least pretty close to parity in the number of capital ships. Which in this case, Germany built 6 battleships and battlecruisers. They also, right here at the start, they've laid down 1 additional battleship. So really can count this as 7. And then who knows what is scrolled off the bottom of the little info box here. So it could be more than that. But they've laid down at least 1 battleship, 1 light cruiser, and 1 armored cruiser. So I know I'm going to go ahead and I think build at least 7 of those pocket battleship type battle cruisers for the rest of the classes. I think there's kind of 2 things you have to keep it, that I say you have to. You don't have to do anything, right? I don't try to tell people you should do it this way, you should do it that way, your way is... That's not the way I play games. All I can do is just kind of offer, here's what I'm thinking, and this is why I'm doing this, and a lot of times I even recognize I may not be doing it the optimal way. I may just do it because I like doing it that way, and there's no real reason for it. So, my perspective, what I see here, what I feel like I have to do is I don't need that many ships of each type for battle purposes. I mean, the random battle generator in this current state of the game, current campaign, is you just need enough to give the battle generator something to work with, because it basically kind of roughly matches up tonnage on both sides. I don't need 15 armored cruisers, because I'm not going to see all 15 of these in one battle. I'm not going to see all 17 light cruisers. It's going to throw, 2, 3, 4 at me, and it'll give me 2 or 3 or 4 to fight back. Roughly speaking. I mean, sometimes there's some mismatches, but overall, the battle generator has kind of, at least within the ballpark of evenly matched forces. And some of them are deliberately asymmetric, like the destroyer or torpedo boat ambushes. Okay, those are a little bit different. But by and large, you get what I'm saying. Y'all play this game too. So I'm thinking, I want to always have some armored cruisers available, some light cruisers, some destroyers. And, you know, accounting for some will be in repair sometimes. Some may occasionally get sunk. So, but I'm thinking something like 8 or 10 of each type is fine. And something like 8 destroyers as well. I don't really need any more than that from a battle perspective. But then the other side of the game is power projection and blockade and transport losses, which occurs outside of battle. And so I need to have a fleet composition that accounts for that as well. Like if I just have 6 or 8 of each type, you know, I might mess around and let Germany blockade me. Don't want that either. Or maybe not blockade me, but maybe that superiority is enough where I'm losing the monthly transport loss battle. So, if I look at my costs versus tonnage, it turns out, and I calculated all this out already, by far the most, and I've made this comment before in other campaigns, by far the most expensive ship type on a per tonnage basis is the destroyer, and torpedo boats too for the 1890. By far the most expensive. It turns out that this battlecruiser costs $989 dollar sign, you know, not pounds, not marks, but dollars. Maybe that would be, you know, that should, you know, I know that's completely on a tangent, but they ought to fix it's a very small detail, but it'd be kind of cool that, you know, if you play Britain, there should be pounds, and if you play Germany, it should be marks. That was kind of a tangent. Sorry. Anyway, $989 per ton to build this thing. $34 per ton per month to maintain it. So this one's just under 1,000 per ton to build. The armored cruiser is 801 per ton to build. The light cruiser is 928 per ton to build. And so they're all kind of in the same ballpark, with the battlecruiser being the slightly most expensive per ton. The light cruiser is actually in the middle, and the armored cruiser is the best deal on a per ton basis at 800, and their monthly costs are kind of the same way. 34 per ton for the battlecruiser per month at in being. 32 for the light cruiser and 28 for the armored cruiser. By contrast, the destroyer is $3,118 per ton to build, and it is $109 per month to maintain per ton. So yeah, on a per ship basis, they're cheaper, but not from a tonnage perspective, not remotely. So what that means is, does that mean I hate DDs are way too expensive? No, that I mean they're fun for battles. They're good for battles. They have their role, so I'm going to have some. But when it comes, but I'm going to have enough for the battles. When it comes to bulking up the fleet for power projection purposes, I just perceive destroyers as a bad deal. The most cost-effective way to bulk up the tonnage, and I built all these ships at pretty high range too. The most cost-effective way to bulk up a lot of tonnage for power projection purposes is the armored cruiser at $800 per ton to build and $28 per ton per month to operate. Cheapest, I'm circling the German ones, but because I haven't done mine yet. So basically I'm going to have a few of each type for battle purposes, and that's fine. I want to maintain about the same number of capital ships as the Germans. Above and beyond that, if I want to bulk up the fleet further, it's going to be the armored cruisers that I spam a lot of. Maybe a few light cruisers. They're not much more expensive, but I am not going to build scads and scads and scads of destroyers. Anyway, that's my thought process on that. So, given that, I'm going to go with, they have 6. I know they have at least 1 building. I'm going to go with 8 Trafalgar class battlecruisers. Let's see what that does to my funds. Okay, plenty of money. I'm going to go with 8. I'm just going to do 8 each of everything. And I think that will give the battle generator plenty to work with for generating encounters. Right, what does that leave me with for money? Still got 274 million. Remember, the ships don't actually build until I hit start campaign. I'm still 0, so this monthly balance surplus thingy is irrelevant. Still got plenty of money there. I like to leave something, depending on the era, but just kind of as a ballpark, I like to leave like 40 or 50 in the, as a starting number for naval funds. So I've got like still 200 million here. I'm going to go ahead and go with, I'll just build a few more. I'm going to add on 4 light cruisers. And then I'm going to, that hardly put much of a dent in it at all. If I burn 100 million, that's enough for 10 more armored cruisers. I'm going to add 2 more of these battle cruisers because I don't really know. I know that they're building at least 1 battleship, but they could have laid down more. They may also have some actually under construction. That happens sometimes. So I'm just going to, I'll build 2 more of these. That leaves Yeah, screw it. I'm just going to build I'll build 12 more of these. Okay, I think that's going to give me something like 20 armored cruisers. So that'll give us 10 capital ships to Germany's 6, 20 armored cruisers to his 15. His, meaning Washington Caps, who apparently is the current leader of the German Navy. 12 light cruisers to Mr. Caps's 17, and 8 versus 18 destroyers. I think that's fine. One other thing I'm going to just experiment with, you know, each one of these ports has a capacity. I've just always assumed it's bad to go over that, or the game just won't let you. It does let you. You can put more than 166,000 tons in Sunderland. And I've picked up a few comments here and there on Steam and stuff that, you know, maybe it's an oversight, maybe they'll fix something in the future, but for now there doesn't appear to be a detriment to going way over capacity in a port. So I'm just going to put them all in one port. I want it to be a North Sea port. I know that. But as far as which one, I don't know if it matters. Just kind of picking semi-random. I'm just going to put everything in Rozeth. See if that actually has a detrimental effect or not. Now, if a port's not, if a port is currently over capacity, I don't think it'll send ships back to that port after battle. But heck, the darn game doesn't send them back to the ship's home ports anyway. So that's not that big a deal. You gotta always be herding cats back to the ports you want them anyway. So yeah, but well, I said Rozeth and then I actually picked Sunderland. Okay, that's fine too. So the entire Royal Navy is based at Sunderland at the outset of hostilities. All right, so that's a look at the initial fleet designs, a little discussion about the fleet composition, 10 to 6 rather, for capitals, 20 to 15, 12 to 17, and 8 to 18. So our Navy's pretty comparable, 50 ships total to the Germans' 56, with right now a preponderance in capital ships. So even though we can't see the number, which is another little kind of a pet peeve, I'm guessing we probably have higher power projection right now than Germany does. As we should. We're Britain. It's the way it should be. But I think that will do for the first episode. Next time around, we'll press on and get into our first battle or two and start getting a look at the British designs. Thank you for watching.